listen to specifics. One thing I've been challenged to do in my life is to read specific words and phrases. Don't just gloss over the things that we might typically look over. And that's what happened to me as I was studying 1 Samuel chapter 15. I was reading in a different Bible, and when I got to that part again, it hit me. And I'm thinking, wow, there's an application right there in just that little phrase. So we're just going to look at 3 verses tonight. 1 Samuel 15, verses 1 through 3. Now, many of us know about Saul, the first king of Israel. We understand that he was not a good king. We understand he had a lot of issues. He had a lot of problems with obeying God. It just never really seemed like his heart was in it. But what we're going to look at, just these 3 verses, I think will open our eyes here a little bit. 1 Samuel 15:1. Samuel the prophet, Samuel also said unto Saul, the Lord sent me to anoint thee to be king over his people, over Israel. Now therefore hearken thou unto the voice of the words of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, I remember that which Amalek did to Israel, how he laid wait for him in the way when he came up from Egypt. Now go and smite Amalek, and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass. And then it goes on as Samuel finishes it up, what he's saying there. Saul gets his men together, he numbers them, he finds out how many men that he has, and then he goes, and sure enough, he defeats the Amalekites. But if you know the account there, he doesn't follow through on exactly what God said. God said, utterly destroy everyone and everything. And Saul kept the king alive, and the people kept the best of the livestock to make a sacrifice to God. And so Saul did not completely obey God. And we know that that was a problem. And in fact, it's from that choice, that decision that Saul made, that God sends Samuel to tell him, God has removed the kingdom from you. You will not sit on the throne much longer, and your children will not sit on the throne because you have not obeyed me completely. So we know that account. We understand that. But there was one phrase in here that jumped out at me today, and I want to share it with you. First verse again, Samuel also said unto Saul, the Lord sent me to anoint thee to be king over his people, over Israel. Now therefore, here's the phrase, hearken thou unto the voice of the words of the Lord. Now, what I did when I read this again was I kind of skipped to see, okay, what is the Lord going to say? I skipped, I wanted to see, wow, this is going to be good. And then the Holy Spirit grabbed me and he said, wait, go back. Hearken thou to the voice of the words of the Lord. Listen to what God is saying. And I wonder if my attitude in reading this wasn't kind of like Saul that day. Okay, tell me what I need to do. Okay, good, I'm going. Tell me what I need to know and I'm going to go. And we jump the gun. We get ahead of ourselves instead of listening carefully to all the words of the Lord. Because the Lord told Saul to utterly destroy the Amalekites, not to leave anything behind. And I wonder if Saul got so excited about getting the news to go and defeat the Amalekites that he just went and didn't pay attention to the details of what God had said. Now, we know that he willfully disobeyed. He even says later, I sinned. I didn't do what the Lord asked me to do. But I wonder tonight, as we listen to preaching, as we listen to teaching, as we read the Word, are we really listening to all of the words of the Lord? Are we zeroing in on what God has to say? And I would challenge us, when we read until the Lord speaks to our hearts. And you know what? That might be one verse. And if God takes one verse or one phrase and just grips your heart and gives you something to go with that day, that's a wonderful thing. We don't have to read 5 or 6 chapters a day to be spiritual. We need to get in here until God gets us. But the way we do that is listening to all of the words of the Lord. Not skipping anything over, not looking past anything because we might already know what it's going to say. And that's an easy trap for all of us to fall into because we've been in church so long and we know kind of what's coming. And so I challenge us as we study, as we read, hearken thou unto the voice of the words of the Lord. As we come to church and listen to teaching, hearken to the voice of the words of the Lord. As we come for the time of preaching, hearken to the words of the voice of the Lord. And even as we hear those songs that are sung here, hearken through those. Listen. God is speaking. And so that's our thought for tonight. Very simple, very high level, easy to understand, but I think it's a good reminder for all of us. And I wanted to share with you what God shared with me. Okay.